So recently I started realizing that, different countries have different names for other countries and stuff, right? Well, then along the way, I realized, Germany, of course, is one of them. The French people call it allemagne. Germany itself calls it Deutschland. And which is actually coincidentally why the Pennsylvania Dutch, which the Amish people here in the United States are called Dutch, because they came mostly from like Germany, Swiss area. Well, so they're saying they come from Deutschland. People in America started saying that they were Dutch. Big misconception. People think that the Amish people come from uh, the Netherlands, but they don't. They're German. But anyways, back to the original point of the video here. Why Germany has so many names. Exonyms explained. I don't know what exonyms is. I guess we're going to find out for sure. Original channel is by General Knowledge, so make sure you go check that out. Give them a like. And we're going to go ahead and jump into this and find out why Germany has so many names.
MC, Saksama, Vokietija, Tyskland. What do you call Germany? Because there are so many options.
There sure is.
Every country has an endonym, what they call themselves in their native language, and at least one exonym, which is what everybody else calls them, usually a slightly different version, at least adapted to the foreign languages. It's why the Portuguese city of Lisboa is called Lisbon and adapted to.
Okay, I had to check this chart out. So we have green is English name related to endonym. Red is English name unrelated to endonym. Okay. Okay. So basically, all the green is like something very similar. The red's completely different, right? I think.
The foreign languages. It's why the Portuguese city of Lisboa is called Lisbon in English, Lissabon in Swedish, or Lisbona in Italian.
Okay.
In other cases, instead of adaptations, an exonym can be completely different from an endonym. Take the example of this country, which in English we call Greece, but the entire Arab world calls a version of Yunanistan, while the Greek people themselves call the country Hellas. Just like Japan calls itself Nihon or Finland Suomi. But in most of these cases, there is a native version and then a foreign exonym version that everybody kind of uses in their own way. However, there is at least one country with multiple exonyms which are very different from each other, and that is Germany. This map of Europe shows us.
I wonder why. So I guess an exonym, I guess it makes sense because it's just something that a culture would be calling something else, right? So we don't know what they call themselves yet or something maybe. And so we're going to develop our own name. And then the the ones that are similar makes sense, I don't know. This is interesting. I wonder why Germany has so many though.
That very well, with each color representing an exonym that the country has. Some versions of allemagne or allemagne in yellow, Germany or Germania in green, Deutschland or Tyskland in blue, Niemcy or an adaptation in pink, and then specific ones for Latvia and Lithuania, and Estonia and Finland. It's also a good way of seeing how the same exonym can have different adaptations depending on the country where it is used and the language that is spoken there. Take, for example, Almania in Turkey or Almain in Cornwall. In this video, we are going to learn why Germany has so many super different exonyms and what each of them mean. So first, why are there so many names for Germany? The simple answer is because Germany as a territory has interacted with various parts of Europe throughout its history. It's in the middle of Europe, and so that makes sense. Okay. And inside the territory that we today identify as Germany, various tribes existed, some on one side and some on the other. And so very often the existence of different names, depending on where you are in Europe, for Germany, has to do with the fact that the tribe with which they interacted was one, when on the other side of Europe it was another. And so surrounding regions knew the territory through different names, depending on which tribe they interacted with and how that interaction went. From the Saxons to the Thuringians, among many others. It's very interesting to see how many European places today can still trace their etymology back to the time when these barbarian invasions took place. We talked about it a couple videos ago, how the region of Burgundy in France traces its origin to the Burgundians, which came from an island in Denmark. And another example is France.
It is interesting And then, going back to what he was saying about even within the same country or within the same region, it might be different depending on which side you are. So it's like it makes sense because people split off. You know, you're over here, you migrate, but the name slowly changes and evolves, and then you get to the next area, so you're calling it that, and then somebody from farther even away that comes to travel hears it, takes that name back, but it's hard to say in their native language, so it gets changed up a bit. So then, I guess with Germany being right there, I mean, it's right under Scandinavia, it's right there in the middle of Europe. Uh, it's almost like a crossroads section, if you will, right?
France, which takes its name from the Franks,
Yeah, the
which
Franks.
also invaded the Western Roman Empire. But anyway, back to Germany. To find out more answers about how each individual exonym came to be, we need to go look at their origin, understand where they come from, and what they mean. But first,
and speaking of the Franks, Germans and Italians were also Franks. The Frankish Empire was almost the whole of Europe, or at least that big section there between Germany, Italy, and France. And it was all the Frankish Empire. It split up into the three by was it three brothers maybe or something? I don't know. So then there was three Frankish empires. France is just the one that took the name from that. You know what I mean? But the Germans, a lot of Germans, I believe, and Italians and all that, there's descended from a Frankish ancestry as well, I believe. And if I'm not getting all of it, definitely feel free to let me know down below. Hit like and subscribe while you're down there, please and thank you.
First, let's begin by understanding the endonym itself, Deutschland, what Germans call
Deutschland.
themselves in German. The German word has its roots in the Old High German word diot, meaning people, and the connected adjective diustig, which means of the people. Therefore, Deutschland kind of just means people's land or land of the people. The people, in this case, being the Germans. A few other countries in Europe, mostly the ones that are closely connected to Germany, call them that too. So I don't know if we should call those an exonym. In the map, they're colored in blue too, and the two biggest examples are the Dutch version of it and the Scandinavian one. The Netherlands and Flanders use Duitsland, and Scandinavia uses Tyskland. I guess they are different words, but Tyskland is based on the older Germanic and Nordic words Bidisker and Theoda, which I'm definitely mispronouncing, but they simply mean people, so the meaning is exactly the same, and the origin too, it's just adapted to a different language somewhere else. Now, this video is all about learning the names that Germany has across Europe, how they're different, and where they come from. And while my channel is a great place to learn about history or etymology, another great place to learn is Brilliant. Brilliant is where you learn by doing, with thousands of interactive lessons in math, data analysis, and AI. I was never great at maths in school, and now going back to Brilliant and learning maths with their really cool and interactive lessons, I've actually found it pretty fun to do. And there are a bunch of reasons why Brilliant is incredible and really sets itself apart from other platforms when it comes to learning. And one that I think really makes a difference is that they actually work on your problem-solving skills. And they do this by teaching you how to problem-solve certain situations, not just by memorizing what it is that you are learning. So while you are building real knowledge on specific topics, you're also learning how to think better when it comes to any other topic. You can learn it through fun lessons, and you can do this on the go with our mobile app. This way, making time to learn is much easier. Take the math content that I mentioned, for instance. In it, you cover real math concepts and techniques while learning to build and use formulas to solve real problems in business and everyday life. So if you want to learn math, data analysis, or AI in a way that is really fun and actually applicable in your real life, try Brilliant today. You can do it at...
He's got his link in his video, which I got a link to his video in mine, so if you want to go check this out for yourself... That's that. Let's get back to the video though. It's a long ad.
So now that we understand the origin and the meaning...
Been trying not to cut out the ads. I did that once and everybody was like, oh no, that's disrespectful, this and that. I was just trying to cut out the fluff from the video, that's all. But so I'm trying to watch the ads, so the original creator can get their due diligence or whatever you say,
of Deutschland, I think we can move on to the exonyms, and I think we should start with Germany because it's the one that we use in English, which is the language that I am speaking to you right now. The modern English word Germany derives from the Latin Germania, which we can see on the map is what the Italians still call the country today as well. The earliest use of this term has been found in the writings of Julius Caesar, a large group of tribes east of the Rhine River. It's interesting how the Romans seemingly just grouped all tribes east of.
So 1st century BC, this was called Belge. That's interesting because that turned into Belgium, of course, in this area. It's interesting because Belgium is a newer country, really, right? I mean, you had the Netherlands, you had France, right? And then Belgium kind of split off of the Netherlands. The whole Spanish War, there was a war with Spain, 80 Years' War, I think, right? Where Spain controlled part of it or something. French people got it. I don't know. Either way, long story short, it's interesting that. So basically, maybe what happened was when they gained independence in this area and became Belgium, maybe they just took their name out of like the history books of like this area here called Belge. I don't know. I'm trying to learn here.
Of the Rhine River. It's interesting how the Romans seemingly just grouped all of these different tribes together, giving them a single name instead of bothering to set them apart individually. In fact, it really seems like they just decided to group up all of the tribes west of the Rhine River and call them Gauls, and group up all of the tribes east of the Rhine River and call them Germani. And so in this case, the origin of Germania in Latin would just be the land of the Germani tribe.
And the Gauls is what's now France, right? I believe.
So we need to take a look at the origin of Germany itself, but that is a little more complicated. According to the book titled precisely Germania by Tacitus, a Roman senator and historian, he writes how Germania was a modern and recently introduced name and had been previously applied only when referring to the Tungri tribe, which actually lived in what is today Belgium. This would therefore be at least one of the tribes that Julius Caesar had talked about and referred to as the Germani Cisrenani, the Germans on this side of the Rhine.
And you got the Frisians up there, right? That's Frisians, which I don't know where this is. Where is this? But that's the Frisians, right? That's Friesland. Or what used to be at the time Friesland.
But it still leaves the question open of what the word meant and where it came from, or if Julius Caesar just made it up. Some say that in Old High German, it meant the way that German people refer to each other, and so the tribes had sort of a concept that united them, and they used that term, but this sounds a little uncertain to me. Others say that he would have gotten the name from the Gauls, which had a word for the tribes across the Rhine River, referring to them as Germani, which would mean something like sons of the forest or just neighbors. And so we can't really know where Germani comes from, but either way, it came to be adapted and used to refer to the tribes in the territory that we today know as Germany in general. So while it is in the territory...
Okay, so here we got Frisians, which, yep, that's around where they're at. But there was also Frisians up in here. At one point in time, this whole entire corner belonged to Friesland. So we have, I'm trying to see if there's anything that still sticks out today to me. Of course, I don't know a lot. But I don't know. I mean, Danes. There's Danes right there, which that's interesting. And then, okay, there's the island of Burgundy where it says Burgundians. That the island in Denmark that they were talking about, that the Burgundy region in France got its name from, which is way over here to the southwest of this area. Huh, very cool. I don't see anything else that's sticking out to me. Angles, I see that. That's interesting because almost like English, right? Angles. Huh.
That we today know as Germany in general. So while it is uncertain in its meaning, we can trace the origin very precisely. It was what the Romans called the area of Germany in Latin. Today it's used by the United Kingdom, Italy, Greece, Albania, Kosovo, Montenegro, Bulgaria, Romania, and Moldova, in addition to almost all countries formerly part of the British Empire, as we can see on this map, with the addition of Russia, Georgia, Cyprus, Armenia, and Mongolia. But if the origin of the term is Latin, it is a little weird that the British kept using it despite their Anglo-Saxon language. When you look at the countries of Scandinavia or the Netherlands, they didn't do that. And the reason why is pretty interesting, and we need to move on to the next exonym to actually understand what the reason was.
Let's do it.
Because while they kept Germania, other Latin and Romance language speaking countries changed it, as is the case with France, Portugal, and Spain, the former colonies of these countries across the world, and the entire Arab world. Because all of these, here in yellow in the first map, use a version of allemagne, Alemania, allemagne, Almania, or Elmania. So where does this exonym come from? Another tribe. The name Allemagne came from the Alemanni tribe, who lived in Alemania, which is today's Alsace, parts of Baden-Württemberg, and Switzerland.
Okay.
And I would guess that the people in what is today France just started using it to refer to the people of Germany because it was the first point of contact that they had with that territory, which puts a little in question the idea that Julius Caesar would have gotten the Germani name from the Gauls, because if the Gauls called them Alemanni, that wouldn't be possible.
Yeah, I was wondering about that. I was wondering about that because you said the Gauls, and then I'm like, wait a minute, but the Gauls, I thought, is what France is now, which France is, said a little bit ago, they've always called it allemagne. So why would they? I didn't mention it, but I was thinking it. Yeah.
Spain and Portugal as the Reconquista took place, and then to the Arab world as Portugal and Spain were the first points of contact of these people with Europe. And here we get to understand why the English actually use Germania, or Germany, instead of coming up with their own version or something that is a little more Anglo-Saxonic, if you will. Because in English, the name Almain or Alman was used for Germany until the 16th century. The word German was then first reintroduced in around the year 1520 as an alternative word at first, perhaps related to the Renaissance and the fascination with all things ancient, then becoming a replacement word and the official term they used to refer to that country. Interesting.
It is interesting because you got Wales and Cornwall, okay, which was historically a lot of connection with the Brittany region of France, right? And they're still calling it Allemagne, but it's so you would think this whole entire area would, because it's so close. You know, France is right there.
The regions of Cornwall and parts of Wales within the island of Great Britain kept versions of the origin Allemagne, Cornwall using Almain and Wales Id Almain. And the reason seems pretty simple because Cornish and Welsh draw on their interactions with medieval Europe, especially with Old French, and I guess they got the name from there and then just decided to keep it when the English ended up changing it. So Deutschland, Tyskland, Germany, and Alemania are understood, but what about the rest? Because there are at least 3 more exonyms of Germany that we need to learn about. The Slavic one, like Niemcy in Poland and its variants, the Finnish and Estonian one, Saksa and Saksama, and the Lithuanian and Latvian ones, Vokietia and Vasija. Again, I know that I'm probably mispronouncing these, so just correct me in the comments if you know how to say it properly. Let's start with the Slavic one that's shown in pink on the map, because it's used by so many countries in Eastern Europe, although nowhere else in the world, I guess connected to the fact that these countries didn't have colonial empires that they spread their language to. The origin of this one is the fact that Slavic languages initially described Germans as Niemcy, meaning something like those that couldn't talk. Or if you want a more direct translation, I guess it would be mutes. One translation I saw also wrote it as the silent ones, which makes it look much cooler and also much scarier.
I wonder why the Slavic seen the Germans as silent. Did the Germans just not care for this? They just didn't talk? Because they knew how to talk. They knew, I mean, clearly they could communicate, right? I mean, we're not going to say that they were mute. I don't think that's the case, but why would they think that? That's interesting.
And the explanation behind this is the fact that communication between two different tribes at the time was a little difficult when they spoke such different languages. And so the Slavic people started referring to the Germans, or the tribe of Germans that they interacted with, as Niemcy, the silent ones, because communication wasn't possible. It's not that they were actually mute, it's just that nobody understood each other.
Okay, that completely makes sense. So you would assume, because you're encountering some other people back in the day, you don't know communicate. You don't know that the world's full of all these people. You just find a bunch of people and you're trying to talk to them, and you don't understand why they're not able to talk back, right? Wow. It's an interesting way to think about it.
The term then spread to all of the Slavic regions, Russia being a big exception, and Hungary one as well, because it's not a Slavic country, but it uses it, so the other way around. Actually, Hungary's case is interesting because while Hungarian is not a Slavic language, they borrow their word for mute from Slavic languages, nema, and so their exonym for Germany ends up being very similar to the Slavic one through an indirect root, being something like Nemetorzag, a compound word consisting of Nemet and Orzag, the latter meaning country. So something like country of the ones that can speak, I guess. A fun fact, a similar case to the Slavics referring to the Germans as mute is the origin of the word barbarian, which would supposedly be onomatopoeic. In the Greek ear, speakers of a foreign tongue made unintelligible sounds, something like bar, 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 and then the term barbarian would have come from that. I don't know if this is actually true, but it would be a pretty cool explanation. So now that we understood the Slavic exonym for Germany, there's only two left. So let's start wrapping things up by understanding the Finnish and Estonian one, saksa. Which comes from Saxon or Saxon in English, which were the tribes that they interacted with the most, or which were most prevalent at the time that the term came to be used by the local Finnish and Estonian people. So it's exactly the same logic as the French calling it allemagne. It was just the tribe that was closest or best known to them from the territory of Germany. Estonia uses a version of it called Saksamaa. I guess it's exactly the same, just in Estonian. Which brings us to the last exonym used for Germany, the ones used by Lithuania and Latvia, which despite being different are grouped up in the map, so it leads us to believe that they have a common origin, Vokietia and Vasia, respectively. And I left this one for last because the origins and meaning of them are a little uncertain, if not fully unknown. They both contain the root words vaka or vakia. Lithuanian linguist Kazimieras Buga associated this with a reference to a Swedish tribe named the Vagoths in a 6th century chronicle. I mean, the Romans called the whole of Germany Germania after a set of tribes that were actually in Belgium, so it would be pretty likely that they called Germany this other name because of a Swedish tribe. It's not unheard of. At the same time, Latvian linguist Konstantins Karulis proposes that the word may be based on the Indo-European word wek, meaning speak, from which derived the Old Prussian word wakis and the Latvian word veskis, both meaning something like war cry. And so if the German tribe that they interacted with was known for having a specific war cry, that could be the origin of the term. Or maybe they also made incomprehensible sounds with their language that the Baltic people didn't understand, and so they associated with just a noise. And
so you got one people saying they're the silent ones, another people saying war cry. They're just screeching these loud war cries. Polar opposites right there.
Chose this name to refer to them in a similar way that the Slavics chose Niemcy. Some other people claim that the name comes from later and is connected to the similarity between Vokietis, a German, and the word Vokti, which means to steal, because of the German Teutonic and Slavonic orders being seen as pillagers of the locals, but this seems a little made up to me. I think the theories by the actual linguists and people that work on this are a little more likely, but which one is true, or the fact that maybe both are, is very uncertain. And so we learn about the 6 or 7 exonyms that Germany has in Europe and the world. And understanding, first of all, why they exist, due to the fact that Germany is such a central territory in Europe, and the fact that throughout its history, it interacted with neighboring regions through different tribes and in different ways. And so also finding out what those exonyms mean and where they come from, most of them being associated to a specific tribe of Germany, like the Alemanni or the Saxons, or a group of tribes that Julius Caesar seemingly just decided to call the Germani. Or even to the fact that they didn't understand Caesar's.
What's that island way up there that also calls it Tyskland? It's interesting that that wouldn't be part of this. Well, I guess that the Vikings went this way. They went here, then they went on to Iceland and Greenland and all that, right?
Seemingly just decided to call the Germani. Or even to the fact that they didn't understand what the tribe said or a specific noise that they made. All of them being pretty different from the endonym of Deutschland that the Germans used to refer to themselves, which surprisingly is used by some countries really far away like China, Vietnam, Taiwan, or Japan, which isn't unheard of. For instance, Norway refers to Greece as Hellas, so that they are correct and use the endonym. Which exonym of Germany do you use for your country? Let me know in the comments, along with any other interesting cases that you know of these types of super different exonyms for a specific country when compared to the endonym or to other exonyms that it may have. Remember to subscribe to the channel. As a reminder,
yeah, so very cool. Exonyms. I didn't know anything about that. I mean, I've often wondered, but it wasn't anything that like I put a whole lot of thought into. But then after seeing this video and it was titled Why Germany Has So Many Names, then I started wondering and I'm like, wow, why is that? Like, why is that? It made me really want to watch it. So I'm glad that I did. Glad that you guys watched it with me. You guys have a super fun, awesome day, and I will catch you in the next one. Take care. Bye.